have entitled this presentation Learning Pathways. It could have equally have been entitled Partnerships, because that's a critical part of the DYW agenda. My overview this morning is to give you a brief insight into our work when we're involved in establishment inspections, aligning it to the DYW agenda increasingly, more often as the months pass, and also to highlight a couple of good practice examples which hopefully we'll get to towards the end of the presentation. Inspection's interesting. I was in a primary school inspection recently when I had a maths focus group and we were discussing aspects of probability. So I shared the question with a youngster. You're at a friend's party. There are 6 cupcakes distributed among 9 plates, so there is no more than 1 cake per plate. What is the probability of receiving a plate with a cake on it? There was silence for quite a period of time, and then this youngster turned to me and put his hand up and said, "I think it's nil if my sister's also got an invite." It's good, isn't it, to look at things from different perspectives, and hopefully today I'll learn throughout today's proceedings in terms of getting your perspective on things, and I trust that in the next few minutes there'll be something worthwhile from the inspectorate's perspective. There was a clear and unambiguous statement earlier on in the year, in 2016, clarifying this aspect of progression pathways. And I think it is important that we do consider the DYW agenda to be an integral part of Curriculum for Excellence. And it's going to be a critical part in terms of ensuring the success of Curriculum for Excellence. So increasingly we are focusing and drilling down on what are the range of learning pathways for youngsters across their school experience, and that particularly comes into prime focus across S1 to S3 in senior school, but not exclusively, and then the senior phase. And critically, the second point there is I think there is a wide recognition from research, and much of the findings from inspection would support that schools cannot do this on their own. The days of schools having closed doors to the community and outside partners are long gone, and there has to be this emphasis on partnership working, where the doors of the school are open and it's a whole community approach to meeting the needs of young people. I think it is recognised that it's schools that are best placed to improve themselves. Yes, they can benefit from outside help and support, but it's the school themselves that know their community well, that know the young people best, and have the best relationships with those young people. And therefore they are best placed with that outside support and guidance to put in place the pathways that will make a difference for those young people. How Good Is Our School, which is our quality improvement framework, was updated last year, probably long overdue, but there's a critical and important statement that's highlighted in that document. And I think these themes of partnership and collaboration will be themes that we'll return to over the course of today, but it is central to schools that are high performing and delivering a highly effective curriculum offer for young people. Curriculum pathways, our knowledge of curriculum pathways has changed over time. It's no longer a one-size-fits-all. It's more about focusing on the learner at the centre of what the offer is and creating the appropriate pathways surrounding that. It's less about coverage, it's more about the progression in the skills. I was in a secondary school inspection last week, and to be honest, I was a bit disappointed at the lack of awareness of skills progression pathways. A lack of awareness, a lack of sense of there being meaningful dialogue between young people, amongst staff, about what is the skill development pathway, what does skills progression look like in that wider context beyond just the course and the national qualification. And I have to say that's probably the exception. Most of the establishments that we inspect now and that we visit now, that idea of dialogue around skills progression and young people being familiar with the wider skill set, that employers tell us these are the important aspects in terms of supporting young people into employment and keeping them there. We've moved beyond this idea of seeing transitions as a place or a time when we revisit learning, and now the best schools and the best clusters and the best communities are seeing transitions as an opportunity to progress youngster skills and to consolidate those that young people are already underway with developing. And also taking cognizance of learners' voice. So learners less being told and more involved in deciding and shaping the pathways. And the best schools are the ones that create the space for that dialogue to take place and for youngsters' voice to be heard and respected and acted upon. The table here summarises three of the significant areas of provision that we would focus on and that we would look to evaluate within a school inspection. The first one is about leadership for change, which is essential and critical, and you will all know either through experience as a parent or experience as a member of staff and a practitioner or someone who works in an authority or as a partner, that leadership for change is critical. And that if schools are going to be responsible for driving their own improvement, then the quality of the leadership is central to that. So that's one of the aspects that we evaluate in the new model of inspection, the leadership for change. Not purely about the head teacher, but certainly the head teacher's role as a central part to that. We also look at learning pathways because we have recognised that it's difficult to meet learners' needs without the right curriculum offer being in place. And therefore the end point, if on the left hand side the leadership creates the culture, the central column is about the quality of the provision, and the column on the right hand side are the outcomes that should result from high quality provision and high quality leadership. And if the outcomes aren't there, then you can take a step back and look at the quality of provision and identify what is it within the quality of provision that's lacking. And if the quality of provision is lacking, then you could go a step back to say there's usually an issue in terms of the way that leadership has been managed and change been managed over time. Some of the questions that might be to the forefront of your mind and our mind when we're in and around looking at the quality of provision for young people. And I guess some of what we have there goes back to a previous circular of some time ago that was issued by the Scottish Government, but it had three central themes to it, and to a large extent these themes still hold. What's the rationale for the curriculum offer? Has the establishment worked out what it wants the curriculum to do for its young people? Secondly, has it been consulted? How widely has it been consulted over? And is there broad agreement that the curriculum offer that's been presented to young people is the best curriculum offer that can be presented? And thirdly, how well is that curriculum offer delivering for young people? How do we know? And what are the things that are in place to evaluate whether it's delivering what was intended? And these three pillars are still, to some extent, very much the backdrop to evaluating the quality of learners' pathways and learning pathways. I think the last point is particularly important. One of the things that came out of an inspection last year when we looked at a thematic inspection within Moray, when we looked at how all partners supported young people into a positive destination across the senior phase. We looked at college provision, we looked at schools, we looked at the contribution of CLD, we looked at the contribution of voluntary and third sector partners. One of the things that came to the fore was that there was a need for professional learning of guidance staff within secondary schools. That had really been overlooked, and there was a need for them really to be up to speed with career and employability trends and intelligence in order that they could inform and direct and help young people to make the best decisions in terms of their course choice across the senior phase. I think we have moved beyond, although you do come across the odd establishment where the rationale seems to be how can we get youngsters through the curricular levels of the national qualifications as quickly as possible, and how many hires can they leave with. Interesting discussion I had with some senior youngsters in a school, secondary school recently, where the youngster was keen to have 10 hires when they left school. One wonders who today would need 10 hires to access a positive destination. And yet, in the same school, there was a youngster with 5 A passes at higher, applied to medical school and hadn't been accepted because the wider skill set and the wider achievement had really not been addressed and taken forward. So that's a message that we need to continue to get out there, to continue to get parents on side and continue to help them to realise the significance of what we're trying to put in place within Curriculum for Excellence. And I think it is very much about finding the best route for youngsters and for groups of youngsters and for cohorts of youngsters within a well-designed framework. We hear a lot about design principles, and certainly within this area, the key principles are about progression and coherence, both in the skills framework, the skills that young people are developing as they come through the broad general education from primary into S1 to S3 and then beyond. Are these skills being developed and progressed, and can our young people articulate that to us well enough in an intelligent and articulate way? So these pathways, yes, it's at transition points obviously, but if we can wind it back to see what are the pathways even from early to first level, within and across level, across sectors, how well established are the pathways, which ones are delivering best for young people, and then crucially broad general education to senior phase, and then senior phase into a positive destination. So what should these flexible pathways lead to? What should be the outcomes for young people? Well, that's not a definitive list, but certainly these are some of the outcomes that you would be expecting if we have learning pathways in place that are delivering well for young people. I think we are fortunate that there's a wide range of resources available, and I know on the Education Scotland site there's a number of good practice examples from across the Ayrshire cited there that are helping people across the country to improve the quality of the provision. And I know from last year's Senior Leadership Conference that was held, the one that I visited at Stirling, where Grange Academy presented on their 3+2 model, that there was a huge amount of interest from across the country in terms of leading people forward to have a more flexible approach in terms of what that offer could be. But certainly if we look at the range of resources that are available to us, there are a range of resources to support staff and schools in terms of the professional learning of individual members of staff and help them to get up to speed in terms of what's possible in terms of the delivery of the curriculum. You'll be aware that these two benchmark statements are part of the DYW surround, and when we're in and around inspection, we are focusing on both of those to the extent to which staff are engaging. Young people have an opportunity to engage with the standards, but also what are the opportunities and pathways into other spheres of curriculum delivery. And when we talk about positive pathways and learning pathways, it's not just about having that positive destination and positive pathway. There has to be an eye to whether or not it's the appropriate pathway for the youngster. And I think Keir Bloomer did help us earlier on in the year when he did raise a question about activity agreements and whether the activity agreements that were in place did represent the best and most appropriate pathway for young people? I think it's a good question to ask. I think we are in establishments where that is exactly the right thing for young people, but I think it's good to have an eye to that, just to evaluate whether, as you drill down into that young person's experience and skill set and career aspirations, does that represent the most appropriate pathway. You're aware of the school partnership offer, and that's something else that we would have an eye to in inspection, looking at that offer, looking at the degree of collaboration, looking at the degree of flexibility within that offer, and whether it has buy-in from staff and parents and young people. And also looking at the planning and around this whole area, both at a strategic planning level and also the operational planning level. So what does that look like? What's the big picture for the school? How have they resourced it? How have they planned it? Is it manageable? Is it delivering? What does it look like at grassroots level in the class? How are staff supported? How are the curriculum inserts delivering for young people, and are they well enough represented across young people's experience? And I think crucially in relation to work placements, and the terminology is important here, it is implying a greater degree of flexibility and personalisation, and increasingly we're beginning to see that more to the fore in schools across the country. But also having clear expectations that there's a build-up phase, what should take place during the phase of work placement, and what should take place after. And I think for any of us who are parents in the room, then that would represent a significant change, and a step change, but a beneficial one in terms of the recognition and the value that's placed on work placements. In terms of leadership for change, Claire, you just keep me right with timing here. I have got a penchant for going over time, so just keep me right. In terms of leadership for change, these are some of the questions that would be to the forefront of our minds when we're looking at learning pathways and we're considering the quality of those pathways. And therefore, in terms of your own mind, good questions to raise for yourself in terms of evaluating the quality of the provision within your own establishment. And I think that last one, to what extent does the school have a joined up and coherent approach to skills development, and is it well understood by all stakeholders? Is everyone talking the same language? Does everyone in that cluster of schools understand what the vision around this area is? Are they able to articulate it and describe it using the same language that's well understood by stakeholders, parents and young people? In terms of curriculum theme, we've touched on those. Are equality, equity and parity of esteem, are they promoted through the provision of these learning pathways? Is it clear where those aspects are being addressed? And certainly in terms of parity of esteem, we're not going to be able to take the foot off the pedal with regard to that. We have to continue down that road, perhaps even with more vigour and energy in the years to come. Transitions we talked about, and partnerships. The degree of collaboration, is it delivering for young people, and what is the impact for learners? And then coming back to the final column of our diagram earlier, how successful is this school in achieving the best possible outcomes for all learners? I had an interesting debate recently with a secondary head when we were debating an evaluation on 3.2 in relation to how successful the school had been in raising attainment and achievement. The inspection team thought it was satisfactory, the school thought it was good, but one of the significant things was that the school really hadn't embraced this idea of learning pathways. It was still on the previous traditional route of academic attainment. Not to say that that's not important, of course it is, but it's not the only game in town. And I think, over history, as we look at the history of Scottish education recently, the development of standard grade opened up certification for all. Curriculum for excellence opened up a curriculum for all. And I think developing the young workforce offers Scotland's young people an opportunity for a flexible learning pathway for all young people.